Hello, I'm Jenya DeLima. Welcome to Writing and Editing, the author-focused podcast that takes a whole person approach to everything related to both writing and editing. Fantasy authors often find their inspiration from real-world tales and history. One fantasy author, KT Anglehart, is here to share how she creates her own mystic tales with a blend of Celtic mythology and contemporary themes. Well, I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us when you first became interested in Celtic mythology, or if you can remember maybe something that originally just grabbed your interest from it?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember the first thing. I think it was like one thing that kind of melded into another over the years because I just grew up having like a fascination with, first of all, magic, the occult, and then all mythology I've ever heard and folklore. And then I started getting attracted to the folklore specifically associated with places like Ireland and Scotland and other British Isles. And then I learned of the Celtic roots from those places. And then I absolutely knew I had to explore them. Oh my God, I'm sorry. There's construction right outside my house. I hope that's not too loud. And so I ended up going there myself with my husband. Yeah, we visited Ireland and Scotland for our honeymoon. And I took notes like a mad person. I just loved everything I was learning. And it was during the time when I was also doing my master's. And so during my master's, I declared my thesis as my first book. And that's how I was sort of guided and I knew what to do. And so all of it kind of worked out that way. Like I was researching and writing for like 4 years. And then the first book, The Wise One, kind of formed. And the magic is heavily inspired by what I've learned and the stories I heard. And I'm also really inspired by like New Age kind of mysticism. It makes magic feel very, very real. And I really wanted that effect on readers. So there's just a little bit of modern, a little bit of everything in there.
Also, how did you blend the two and then come up with your magic system based on the inputs from historical data and then more current information?
It's a very interesting and difficult question to answer. I think it's more about the folklore, and the stuff I learned was more tied to the land, the landscapes. And I wanted to make that come through, and I made the stories seem like they were real to the characters. So there are giants that form the Giants Causeway in Northern Ireland, for instance, and it doesn't counter anything else that I weaved in to enhance the magic that comes from New Age mysticism and esotericism. So that stuff is just kind of was always in the back of my mind because I would read about it. And that was very easily it just kind of breathed life into the folklore. It's hard to explain. I guess you'd have to read it to know how I managed to to make the magic a magic system, but it just worked.
Well, for some of these ideas you had for at least this book, did they change at all when you saw these places where the stories originated from in real life?
100%, and they weren't even formed. Honestly, I'm a very light outliner, so I'll outline super roughly. The first book was even probably barely outlined, like it was, but then it would change and change and change over 4 years. It kept changing every time I drafted and every time I learned and researched, and the story just kept making more sense as I was writing it. I was much better at outlining and a more disciplined for the second and now the third that I'm working on right now.
And just so it doesn't seem like we missed any of your biographical details, maybe if we let listeners know what your master's was in.
Sorry, yeah, it was just creative writing masters. I took
creative
it.
writing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not. I'm not a scientist or anything. Unfortunately, I do not have
You're
a
a
math brain.
scientist of words. What are you talking about?
I love that. I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn. Yes, I have a bachelor's in journalism. I studied script writing as well because I really love the idea of writing for the screen. I always wanted to learn to write for television and that sort of thing. And then kind of told myself, I need to write a book. I'm an author. I need to write a book, which I knew my whole life, but I guess it kind of came to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm disciplined enough to do this by myself. So that was why I chose this program. I knew that you could declare a thesis project and really focus on it
Yeah.
among the other like amazing instruction that they give. So that's what happened there. Like I made my first book, my thesis project. So thankfully I was very heavily guided along the way.
And did you always know that you wanted to write in this genre, or did you have other ideas that you bounced around first?
I think I always knew. I think since reading Harry Potter as a
Oh,
child and watching Charmed, I absolutely knew I would be writing in this genre. Now I think I'm open. I really like lighthearted comedies and stuff like that, that I think would have just like a spark of magic in it. What do you call it? There's a word for
magical
it.
realism?
Yeah, sorry, I was completely blanking. So like magical realism combined with some like rom-com. I think I would kind of
Okay.
go into that direction
Yes.
for yeah, for another not series. I'm gonna say standalone because a series is a heavy commitment. I'm gonna need a break after this.
Well, besides those other influences, what are some of the other characters or stories that most inspired your work or will most inspire your future work that you seem to already be plotting a little
Mm.
bit?
Oh my God, I'm a mess with the
I love a
inspiration.
good
I,
mess.
I am not a typical like genre following author kind of thing. Like I take inspiration from anything that's funny or touching or that just stays with me. Okay, so one of my future projects, I don't know if you've ever watched Fleabag,
Oh,
but
yes, I've heard of it. And I think I've
okay,
seen
well,
one. Yes.
her character is so raw and hilarious. And I just kind of saw this protagonist in a future work that I think would be just like amazing to follow. Anyway, so just like that has nothing to do with my genre. So I'll get inspired by that. I'll get inspired by Wednesday Adams. Like I'm like, oh, I could go younger the next book, and I love that vibe of the mystery and of the darkness, and I don't know. So
Yeah.
like I said, I'm kind of all over the place in
But
terms of. Sorry.
I think it's all those mashups though that keep something feeling fun, where even though you've taken something that maybe we've seen this theme before, this trope before, but you offer something new just because again, there are those unlimited possibilities if you take one from column A and one from column B and like, yeah, what's gonna happen?
Exactly. What's going to happen? What happens if you mash these people together?
Yes. Well, going back to the mythology part, can you share one or two of the themes that you've seen maybe crop up over and over
Hmm.
that are just as relevant today?
Hmm. I'd have to think about that one. There's always like a heartfelt kind of connection with humans or something. There's like a cross with humans in a lot of their stories. There's a lot of like connection with family. There's a lot of misunderstandings in
Ah,
their stories,
yes.
which is hilarious too. That's
See,
what
it goes
like
back to rom-coms.
yes, and I love those. I really, it is really, you can't not laugh sometimes at these, the misunderstandings. Like that trope is great. Yeah, like any kind of fairy tale. It's like those themes sort of circle around, and I think that that's across cultures. I'm sorry, I can't think of a specific example. It's like I'm literally like staring at a pile of books that I'm researching right now for the third one. I shouldn't say researching because now I'm done. I'm just editing, but they're still staring at me, making sure that I've done them justice.
Well, let's talk about research then. Yeah. So besides visiting the countries themselves, which, many people aren't going to have that kind of opportunity, what other resources have you used?
Really a lot of books. So in those countries, I always buy books from them, from those books
Oh,
from the local bookstores. And some of them have, honestly, you won't find these stories anywhere else. So for instance, the last time I went to Scotland, I went to Orkney. Sorry, the time before that, I went to Orkney in the north. It was very heavy on witch trials there. It has a dark history. And there was this tiny, tiny book. I think it might have even been self published in one of their bookstores, and it was about someone who was accused of witchcraft, and she's called the Storm Witch. She was known to like wreak havoc with storms and that sort of thing, and the people feared her. Of course, she was not a real witch. I mean, she was just a woman. Actually, she had a happy ending, which is so rare, and that's why it stuck with me. But she was saved by someone, supposedly a lover, and she managed to escape during her trial before she was about to be dragged to essentially be burned at the stake. So a bit of a spoiler alert, she kind of creeps into the third book because I find it's such an important part of history.
mhm.
So I, thinking of research, like I do weave real life accused witches into the story too, little nuggets here and there, and just like to teach the people. Teach. I don't like to use the word teach. I don't mean to preach in my books at all. It's just to like inform.
Yeah,
Um,
inform. That's a good one. Yes.
inform, yeah. So research comes from all over. Also the guides. I kind of like being a tourist. Like I like hearing guides speak to me,
Mhm.
and we learn a lot from them, and they're so willing and so friendly. When you tell them what you're doing, they're so interested too, and very, very sweet.
Mm.
I never mean to say like I know more about Scotland than a Scottish person. Never. Like I just love it so much. It's like kind of my these books are kind of my love letter to Ireland and Scotland.
I think tour guides is a great resource. And I was just thinking about how many stories they must hear on a weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah.
And even all those just word of mouth type stories that never get written down, or versions of them that never get written down and just been passed from family to family or community to
Yeah.
community. And now they
I
have them to share with the people on their tours.
I love that you said versions of them because it's so true. The versions I heard of some of these very popular stories, again, that I tried to weave in, and some of them are not folkloric, they're just historical. And their versions a little bit different. Like it's like they're told something else while the world maybe knows it some other way.
Mhm.
Uh, so I just love that. And that's the version I use because I was told by a native, Scot.
Are there any stories that you used maybe a lesser known version of once you found out about it?
Mhm. There are. Ask me in an email and maybe I can't remember. You caught me on a day where I have not stopped writing and my brain is mush and I cannot think of it right now. I
We'll
cannot.
go to some mush brain questions
Oh
instead.
my God. Yes, please.
Let's see. I'm trying to think now of something easier. What's your favorite color?
Not too hard.
All right. Well, how
I
do
like,
you
I'm going to say I like greens and purples. Okay, go on.
greens and purples works. You can have more than one. Why am I limiting it? That's not fair. Guess so how do you make something from mythology that is familiar? Say you do use the most popular version. What do you do to make it feel maybe relevant, or not even relevant, but just new and exciting to people who may have heard the
Mm.
story 100 times before?
Because I think there's subtext in those stories. There really is. And there are all these underlying kind of messages and themes. And or maybe there's like darker parts of that person or really good parts of that supposed bad character that no one's really explored. So I
Mm,
like to just play with that a little bit and make them talk to my characters. And I think that makes it a little bit more interesting.
yes, for sure. I love stories that do that too. Just as a little side note, there's so many favorite things, and I think about like even Wicked with Gregory Maguire and how yes,
Yes.
and how that just like felt almost world shaking at the time when it came out and reading it. Yeah, and it's just so fun seeing, okay, well, what if we look at this side character over here and how they felt about all these events, or how they witnessed everything and their perspective of it? Because it's just like with anything, even in real life, we could be in the same room and going through the same thing, but one person's in this corner and one person's in this corner. So every single bit of external stimuli you're taking in is going to be at least slightly different.
Yeah.
And that's going
I
to
think that's so
teach.
well said.
Yep.
Wicked is like it's my favorite spin on a fairy tale.
Mhm.
Sort of, I don't know if we could call it a fairy tale, but it spin on a story. That angle is just genius. And I saw it. I didn't know the story when I saw the play.
Oh,
Ugh, I think I cried the entire time for how amazed I was.
oh, I'll admit to sobbing when she sang Defying Gravity, and I saw it on stage. And I've read the book like many times, so it didn't even matter.
Goodness. And I was skeptical about the movie because I'm like, no, no, there nothing's gonna beat this production. And the movie was fantastic.
Mhm.
It's actually
So,
very good.
so if we move into world building, how does adding some of these settings that you've seen in real life or this mythology, how does that influence your world building or how you go about doing it?
Oh, it really heavily does, actually. So the spots I visited, especially across Ireland in the first book,
Mhm.
like the spots I visited during my honeymoon, like most of them are in the first book. And if I'm learning about the land there, it's so for instance, there's something called the Burren, and it looked like kind of nothing when we drove through it. I was like, where are we? It's just like a landscape of it looked like I described it in the book as like it's as if Thor cracked a hammer
Ah,
and the
yes.
land sort of
It's
broke.
amazing
And
how much that phrase immediately brings to mind this very specific image.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, what is this? And and the guide said it's home to actually like so many native flora and fauna,
Ah.
and it's a very important ecological landscape. And it really looked like you're just going through it and you're thinking, this isn't much. So I love that. And like it's a place they drive through, and it's just the point I make in there where say like there are creatures among around here, you might not see them, but they're here. And then like for instance, another place that comes to mind is Connemara, where I tried to describe it in the book as best I can, but I was so wowed. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. And I learned from a guide that the legends are that there are dwarves and fairies that roam the land. And I thought, well, that's going in the book. So one of the encounters she has with a fairy in the first book happens perhaps in Connemara. Anyway, just to say.
All right. Well, are you ever careful about how much of the real world creeps into your fantasy settings?
Yeah, and I have to be. So it takes place in the 90s, early 90s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And what's going on is the troubles in Northern Ireland in the early 90s. I mean, it happened way before that, but like it was really bad at that time. I don't know if anyone's ever watched Dairy Girls. It's a phenomenal show. It's very funny, but it's like in the context of like that and what's happening. So just to put in context what the troubles are. So it's a very sensitive topic, and it's still sensitive among Irish people and Northern Irish people.
Hmm.
Um, they've kind of all agreed to disagree, so it's tough. But I couldn't ignore it, and I in fact weaved it in a little bit to this in the storyline in a background sort of way, but still placing importance on it. But I couldn't place too much importance on it. So that's a very good question that you just asked. It's tiptoeing, but I did consult someone from Northern Ireland, specifically from Belfast, who was actually, he studied history and he just knew so much about it. And I just wanted to make sure like those passages were okay. Like, is this
Oh,
okay
right.
that I said it this way, that I explained it like this? And like I tweaked accordingly. But yeah, you can't be too careful when it's not your culture and you're
Mhm.
researching and you're explaining something that happened. Like it was important to me that I got it right.
Yes. Well, do you have any tips for finding that perfect blend of fantasy and realism?
I think take really the elements that stay with you, that stand out to you most. That's certainly what I did. What pulls me to a story is I think there's a reason behind that. So there's a reason why you're attracted to a story. So take those things, those lessons you learned, or things that made you laugh, or things that made you ponder, or things that made you wiser, and work that in. And also be creative because there's no real rules. I think as long as you're respectful of the culture, you're maybe the mythology that you're maybe sort of borrowing from, then twist it the way you want to. We have creative license, we can do that, but definitely acknowledge it. And yeah, just take the most beautiful parts of it and make it your own.
Hmm. Well, and then for our final question, if you could meet one character from Celtic mythology, who would it be and why?
Yes, the I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I always pronounce it the Kaik.
Mm.
So she's like the wise woman, the witch who guides others during difficult times. And as the season changes, you might see her and she might look extremely ugly to some with like one eye in the middle of her forehead. And then she becomes beautiful, like that kind of thing. And she may also be in the second book. But yes, I would meet her. I would want to hear everything she has to say. She's seen it all. She is ancient and extremely wise. She's a wise woman. So yes, I would meet her.
That is a great answer. Now I'm going to have to go look this person up and or this character rather. Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you again for such a fun interview.
Thank you for having me. It really was fun. I hope I didn't stumble too much on my words as I do usually.
Well, there is a difference between writing and speaking, as I myself have even known with
Yeah.
reading my intros.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes for additional information, including all of her links. Thanks again.